Alright, so I'm back from quite the hiatus here, from sewing at least. This first part of the video you're going to see was filmed probably sometime in January or so, I'm guessing. And that's going to be the bridge pockets and how to sew them. Okay, so to make the pockets for the side of the hammock, let me first show you, I made some different prototypes to figure out what would work best. And this is, if you guys can see that, that is more or less what we're making, that shape. So it's got that nice kind of angle like the War Bonnet Ridge Runner has. It's not going to have that curviness to it, the one we're going to make. It's just going to be kind of a straight pocket, which in my preference actually I think is going to work better. So the rectangle that we're going to make, I have some drawings here. I'll put them on the screen here in a second so you can see them. But the rectangle we're going to cut is going to be 34 inches by 31 inches. And then from that, on one side, on one of the 34-inch sides, we're going to measure in 7 inches from each end. So we have a total of 34 inches on one side, 20 inches on the other, and then our angled cuts towards that 20-inch side. Like I said, I'll put a diagram up here, right here, for you guys to check out. And now we can go ahead and get to the cutting and the sewing, all the fun stuff. So let's go run over here and take a look at what it's like to cut the fabric. Alright, so what we're going to want to do is to measure our 31 inches this way. And the really nice thing is that my fabric is 62 inches, so I can get 2 of these pockets out of one width of fabric. Obviously, if your fabric is like only 60 inches or something like that, you can modify this length of this pocket some so you can get 2 out of the width. But mine's 62, so I'm doing 31 inches. And again, if you remember the tip from the previous DIY videos, it's good to find the ripstop pattern line that is closest to your mark, and then you can follow that and have a really exact straight line. So I've got my 31-inch line marked here, and now I need to mark my 34-inch line, so I'm just going to measure up 34 inches. And then now I'm just going to follow that ripstop pattern all the way up to that 34-inch mark now. Alright, so we're back at the sewing table now, and hopefully you guys can see somewhat what I've got. I've got my fabric here that's all cut out. And the first step that we need to do is to give ourselves some nice rolled hem edges. And I'm going to roll the angled cut here, the angled sides first. That's going to be our top of our pocket. So if we fold it over, we can kind of get an idea of what our pocket's going to look like. Let's open that back up. And again, we're going to just do a simple rolled hem along the angled cuts. Alright, so I've got both sides with a rolled hem. Now what I'm going to do is take the side that I want facing outwards, which in this case is my shiny side of material, because the hammock I made with the bottom side, the side away from my body, the shiny side. So to keep it all matching, I'm going to do the same again here. I'm going to fold this to make the pocket, aligning the angled edges that we just rolled hemmed, aligning those together with the shiny side out. And just like we did the bridge end caps, if you remember that seam, we're going to kind of repeat that process here, where we're going to just do a straight stitch and sew this together, and then flip it inside out, and then sew it again to encompass this rough edge. Alright, so we trimmed our tails now on both edges, and so the last step here is just to go ahead and flip this back right side out, which is in our case shiny side out. And you can see when we do that on the outside, we've got a nice finished seam, although I'll push these corners back out. And we've got a nice finished seam on both sides. And then on the inside, it's a finished seam as well, but we just have a little piece of flap. It's just fine. So that is how you make the pockets. I'm going to go ahead and make the second one, but that's how you make the pockets. And I'll just show it to you so you guys can kind of see. And there you go. So I'm not sure you can see with black on black, but you can see the pockets are attached. I'll lay this out here so you can get a bit better view. All right, so again, here are the pockets. And you can see it folded back here from the edge of the hammock. That's the top end up there. And all I did was take the pockets and just did a straight stitch along the inside edge of the pocket, sewing it to actually the outside edge. You can see the outside edge of the hammock body. And there's just 2 rows of stitching there. You can see that attach this pocket. But I have used this several times now. These pockets really do work great. Really great for pockets. So that's just all you need to know for attaching the pockets. I'll get you guys some measurements here so you can see where exactly I attach the pockets. However, it's not going to make much of a difference in the world if it's an inch or 2, a couple inches. Either way, it kind of can come down to preference where you attach these. Okay, but I'll let you know measurements of where I attached mine. Okay. So if we measure down, and this is all I did for doing mine. If I measure down from the edge of the hammock to where those start, it's approximately 9 inches. I started the pocket about 9 inches down from the head end of the hammock. Okay? And attaching it towards the center of the hammock here. Alright? So those are kind of your starting points, about 9 inches in from the head end of the hammock, and then continue forward. And like I said, I found that this is a pretty good spot. It doesn't get you down too much into the curve in the middle, but it's also far enough down from the head where you can reach, and I feel like I have really good access to reach into the whole pocket when I'm laying in the hammock. So that's all you do to attach the pockets, and now we can look at the bug net more closely. Okay, so now we need to create a template to cut out the corner pieces that the zipper is going to go around. So if we imagine kind of like this edge being the hammock body and this edge being the hammock end cap, we need a piece of fabric that's kind of cut in a triangle shape to kind of connect the two for the zipper to easily go around, because the zipper is not going to make a 90-degree turn. Okay, this whole process of the corners becomes probably the hardest part of this entire process. This particular step isn't the most difficult, but we need to use a little bit of math. So we're going to be making a right triangle, like I said, kind of along these lines. We need this end piece here to be ultimately about 5 1/4 inches. But we can't kind of easily get 5 1/4. It comes out to 5.3 inches, which is fine. And that way we can have even numbers on the sides that are easy to measure. So this side needs to be 3.75 inches, or 3 3/4, and same with this side, 3.75 inches. And then we'll measure those out. Again, that's 3 3/4 inches. And then we'll connect the 2 points. So 3 3/4, 3 3/4, and then connect the line. Next step is to go ahead and cut this out. All right. And here is our template. So if we get a piece of fabric here, we can go ahead and cut this out. excuse me, what we're actually going to do is trace it out, and I want to avoid these rough edges. So I'm just going to go ahead and line it up with one edge here, and then I will draw out, and I'm just going to keep flipping this until I have 4. Obviously, the more shared edges that we can do, the better, because it's going to mean less cuts, which saves us time. Alright, so what we've got here is I've got a hot knife to cut these out, and the reason being that as I cut these out with the hot knife, it's going to seal the edges, making it so I don't have to roll a hem, and so it won't fray. And I've just got a piece of hardboard underneath, which will prevent my countertops from being burned. Simple as that. So now we have our 4 triangle pieces cut out and sealed so they won't fray. And now we can get to sewing. Alright, so hopefully you guys can see what I've got going on here. I've got the top edge of the hammock here. This is the edge of the hammock. You can see here's the connector. And then the bridge cap, or the bridge end cap here. We've got the pockets right here. You can see those. And so all we need to do now is make a few measurements, a few marks on our fabric. So taking the pocket, the outside edge of the pocket, the part that's not connected to the hammock, we need to measure down 4 inches. Okay? And I've done that, and that mark is right here. That's 4 inches. And then going to the top of our hammock now, and going across the bridge end cap here, we need to mark down, we'll do 5 inches. And you're going to mark those marks just on the head end, okay? And then what that's for is the grosgrain. We're going to sew grosgrain along between those marks, coming up above our hammock body just a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see that. And that's going to give us a nice easy edge that's thin and easy to sew our zipper to, and ultimately our bug net to. Okay? So what we need to do is to come down to that first mark we made on the outside edge of the bridge pocket. Okay? And we're going to start just past that. Your grosgrain you want to start completely below the surface of the fabric of the pocket. So we're going to go just past, maybe an inch or so past that mark we made. It doesn't really matter, to be honest with you, once it's below the fabric line. So just past, and what we want it to do is to come up above the fabric line at that mark. Okay, and then we're going to sew along, continuing that angle until we get to the point where the grosgrain's about halfway up the fabric. So about half of it sticking up past the fabric. And then we can level off. Okay, so we're going to just keep sewing along the bridge pocket here. And then when we get to the bridge hammock body where they connect, we're going to make the jump from the pocket. And this is a little bit tricky, but make the jump from the bridge pocket to the bridge body, keeping that same half mark of the grosgrain above the fabric line. And we're going to sew along that edge and then make the turn. We might have to do this in 2 strokes, two passes, but sew up to the corner, and then we're going to fold it and then sew down to that 5-inch mark. And at that 5-inch mark is we're going to reverse the process where we came above the fabric line. That's where we want the grosgrain to go back below the fabric line. Okay, so you're kind of going up and then back down with that. So all you need to do is heat seal the first edge and then sew this, and then right before we finish we'll cut and heat seal the other edge. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So really take your time here, and also a helpful tip is to use probably a size 14 needle or something big like that. That's really going to let you power through some of this thicker chunks of fabric. So with my needle in the down position, I'm able to lift my presser foot, rotate my fabric, and rotate and ultimately give my grosgrain the fold that it needs. So now as we approach the pocket, we need to kind of just separate them here at a little bit of an angle so we can jump from one to the other. And there's really no other way to explain it. You'll just kind of have to see it when you do it. Bada bing, bada boom. We're done, and we've got that fabric for our corners sewed on. Okay. Trim my tails here from sewing. And all I'm going to do is just kind of repeat this process on the other side. Alright, so down now at the other end of the hammock, the foot end. If you remember our measurements, we measured from the, we did the bridge pockets 9 inches down from the beginning, and then we did the pockets 4 inches past that, so total of 13 inches. So that's all I'm going to measure out here, is measure from the end, 13 inches. And again, this doesn't need to be rocket science precise, although I'm sure some of you will do that anyways. Just measuring 13 inches, and then again on this side we will do the same 5-inch mark. Okay, so we're at the end, we're stopped, presser foot goes up, not that it amounts to much of a difference, and we're able to then make this turn. And actually, you know what, I'm going to go one more. This is one of the least fun parts of this project now, is attaching these corners. But what we need to do is take our triangle piece and we're going to find the right angle. That's going to go directly in our corner. We're going to line that up and we're going to sew along one side. Now I find it's helpful to get my needle all the way closest to the one side, just because this thick webbing here gets in the way and it'll push your presser foot off to the side. So we're just going to get all this lined up. Remember, make sure your corner's in the corner. Drop your presser foot down. And we'll just sew along one side. Don't forget to back stitch on each side. Alright, now it's time to get low tech. This is just the way I found. So you can see we've got our corner piece sewed on to one side, but now we need to connect it to the other side. Now, in Grizz's videos, he does this by hand. I have tried, and I have successfully too, used a machine to do it, but really, I find that it's more trouble than it's worth, and it is easier. I like to sew one side with the machine because that's easy and fast, and then this other side I like to pin in place, and then I'll sew that side, this final side, by hand, and then once I sew it by hand and everything's in place, I'll go back through and I'll run stitching along the hand stitch side as far as I can go easily, just to give it a little reinforcement. So that's all I'm going to do now. I'm just going to go ahead and hand stitch this side, pin it and hand stitch. Alright, so you can see I have got this side pinned now, and then it's just a matter of stitching it up by hand. Now this definitely isn't sexy and it's not fun, but I've really found that this is the easiest way to do this. Alright, so I've pretty much got this whole side sewn on now by hand. There's a little bit, you can see a little bit of a flap here, but that doesn't matter. That's going to get sewn down right now when I go back over my hand stitching as much as I can with the sewing machine here. And that's about as far as I feel comfortable going, so I'm going to pull it out now and trim it. Alright, so I've just got the hammock hung up here in my living room, and I thought I'd show you the progress. So we've got the grosgrain. It's hard to see here, black on black, but we've got the grosgrain sewn on. Get my hand underneath there. And we've got the corner sewn on, and I've got that now on all four corners. So this should allow the zipper to come up, go around and over with no problem. Okay, so that's where we're at. Let's go take a look at the bug net. Okay, so let me show you what we've got going on here. I've got another one of these templates here. You can see that one piece of hardboard for this template wasn't quite big enough, so I've duct taped on another chunk on the side. But this is the overall shape that the bug net's going to be. I will post right now the dimensions for it. Alright, so now that you guys know the cut lengths, I'm going to go ahead and lay out my fabric, my no-seam netting, and lay my template on top, trace it, and cut it out. I'll check back with you guys when I'm done. A few key points that we need to point out now. So if the bug net's cut out, this triangle cut out up here needs to be, like the bridge end caps, sewn together. That's going to be the head end where the bug net gets lifted up off of us. So that needs to be done first. The second thing needs to be down here that we're going to sew some grosgrain on, which is how we'll connect this to the hammock at the foot end, and then we'll add some ties so that the whole thing can be rolled up and then tied at the bottom. Okay, so first we'll sew this together, and then we'll probably add our tie out up there, and then we'll go ahead and probably do the zipper actually, and then do this part down here. Alright, so the family's back home, so it might be a little loud now. But what we've got to do, if you remember now, is take this triangle part and sew it together. And we're going to do that the exact same way that we did the bridge end caps. So we'll just line them up and put a line of straight stitching through it. Alright, so if you guys remember from the end caps, now that we've sewn this together, we're going to flip it inside out now, and we'll do another row of stitching to encompass this entire unfinished edge. Alright, and the last step now to finish this off is, just like on the end caps, we have this little flap. We're just going to fold it over and stitch it down so it's flat. And just like that, we're done sewing that triangle part together, and our bug net is starting to take shape. Let's just go ahead and trim the tails off now. Alright, so you can see that now we've kind of got our head area done. The next step that we need to do is to create, the next step we need to do is to create the little pull point where we'll attach shock cord to pull this up off our face. And that needs to pretty much be at the peak of what we just sewed. So if we just kind of mark a little X towards the top here, so we mark where we're going to be sewing, we can then go, and we're going to need two different size grosgrains now. we're going to need 1 inch. I think it's technically 7/8. And we're just going to cut a hunk off that's probably, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. This is going to be the base for it. And we're just going to heat seal the edges so it doesn't fray. Alright, and the next size we'll need is 1/2 inch. And for this, you want to take about something about like that. So that's probably 4 or 5 inches. Again, we'll just cut that off. Alright, so basically how this is going to work is we're going to sew this 1 inch piece over that X we just drew. We'll just sew a box around this to attach it. And then we're going to take this, fold it in half, and we're going to sew half of it down on top so that we have a nice anchor point that we can pull from. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Sometimes with the no-seam being a little slippery, it's nice to pin it down, but definitely not necessary, and I'm actually not going to do it. Just make sure that when you get your first stitch or first couple stitches in, that it's lined up. And it's important here, we're going to end our stitch at the end with the needle down so that we can lift our presser foot and spin the fabric. And like I said, we're just going to sew a box all the way around. Good idea to trim your tails from when you began before you finish, just so they don't get tangled up. Alright, now an optional thing you can do if you just want to make sure this is nice and strong, which I'm going to do because I'm not too gentle on my gear, is I'm going to take another piece of 1 inch webbing that's the exact same size, and I'm just going to line it up underneath on the bottom side and sandwich the netting between the two pieces and sew that on now in the exact same way. Alright, so now what we need to do is take our 1/2 inch piece here, fold it in half, and then just to keep it together a little bit easier while we're sewing it to the other part, I'm just going to sew a couple stitches in here to help it stay together. Alright, so we need to determine which is going to be our outside. I think will be this side. Not that it really matters too much. And we're going to sew this loop on with the loop facing towards the head end. So like I said, we'll take our loop, lay it on top so that the loop is facing towards the head end, and we'll just sew a couple lines of stitching into it to secure it. Alright, so the next step is to find the center point of the foot end, which I've done here. And I'm going to mark out actually 20 inches. So I'm going to do 10 inches in the center, and then I'll mark 10 inches on either side. So at the 0 point and at the 20 point here. And what those marks are going to be, the middle mark's not really for anything now, but the side marks are going to be where the zipper comes around to the foot end and stops. And that's going to give me this 20-inch section here to tie some ribbon on to tie this all up when it's done. But for now, we just need to know that the zipper is going to end here. Or actually, in theory, probably just past it. So the next step is the zipper. So let's go take a look at the zipper. As you can see here, I've got a lot of zipper. You obviously will not need this much. I just bought it in bulk to save some money over the next few years as I use zipper for things. I'm not sure exactly, because of this, I'm not sure exactly how much you need, as I'm just going to be working right off the roll with this. But I'm sure if you look at the measurements, you can figure out how much approximately you need. Just go on the little bit safe side and get a little bit extra. But all we're going to do is just Again, sear the ends with heat so they don't come frayed. We're just going to take this and sew it onto our hammock, or excuse me, onto our bug net. Let's take my sewing machine here, and you don't need this, but it certainly helps, and that is a zipper presser foot. So I'm going to switch out my presser foot to the zipper presser foot. And all this allows me to do, it's got a little groove in there so it'll ride along. When I push the zipper foot down, it'll rattle right along the edge here. It just makes it really easy to get a nice straight stitch. So you guys can see, I'm going to start on the opposite side, and that way when I flip over, now it'll be on the right side. There we go. So I'm just going about a ½ inch or so past my mark on the end. And you can see that I'm ending my stitch in the down position again so that I can keep that turn going and not have to worry about my needle pulling out. And it's best to just take it easy, take it slow on these turns. But your sewing machine and you should be able to do it no problem. And this is pretty straightforward, we're just doing straight stitching now, so I'm going to go all the way around with this and I'll catch back with you guys when I roll this back out. Alright, so I'm almost to the end. You can see I've got my end marker here. So I'm just going to cut a little bit extra. Maybe that's even a little bit too generous. I'm going to cut a little more off. And again, we'll just melt the ends so that it doesn't fray on us, and we can go ahead and finish our stitching now. Alrighty, that side's done. Let's trim our tails and I'll show you guys how we roll this over and finish the zipper. Alright, so what we need to do is take this, since we just set it upside down, and flip it. And I'm actually going to start on the other side this time, it'll be a little easier. But you see, it was like this, we sewed it like that. We're going to flip it now this way and sew it along like this. And this time, using the zipper foot, we're going to go along the opposite edge, the opposite side bump, which will give us a nice stitch on the outside. Alright, so same thing, we're going to go right back around the whole thing doing this. This one goes a little quicker because you can, everything's already in place, you just got to follow the little track. This is where a zipper foot really helps. Alright, so we've got our zipper on. It's looking really good now. This next step is going to seem a little crazy to some people, because it did to me before I figured out that I should do this. But we're actually, so we don't have any zipper pulls, we don't have any stops, we don't have anything on our zipper right now. And we've just sewn it on the bug net. And so the next step is to actually sew this to the hammock itself, the hammock body, but I don't want to deal with all this extra fabric. So what we need to do is actually pull the zipper apart. But don't freak, because when we put the zipper pulls back on, we can attach it all back together. And everything's the exact right length. So there. We don't need this anymore. We'll put that to the side. And now we're only having to deal with this, which makes life a lot easier. For the foot end of our bug net, remember we marked the middle and then 10 inches out, right? We're going to replicate that on our bridge hammock. So we've got the middle marked by the seam, And now I'll put the 10 in the middle. And mark at the 0 point. And at the 20 point. Okay, but wait, we're not done yet, because remember we started the zipper not exactly at those points, so we need to figure, we can actually even probably just hold them and match them up, where we need to start the zipper for real on the bridge hammock itself. Alright, so I've got my lines marked. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got 2 and 2. And it's the inside lines now that I'm going to actually start my zipper. Okay? So I'm just going to get that all lined up first. Just want to double check everything before you start sewing here, because this part's important. You don't want to screw it up. So you just need to make sure you get it all lined up, which I have done. And now we just kind of repeat the process again. We're just going to sew the other side of the zipper onto our bridge hammock now. The hard part, the trickiest part, is going to be when we transition from the straight edge to our triangle piece that we sewed on. So we just need to be really mindful there. So I've got the zipper completely attached now. I'm just going to go ahead and sew a second line of stitching, securing the zipper really well to the hammock body. And once we have that done, we can go ahead and zip the two together and we'll be almost done. We've got the zipper completely attached now to the hammock body, and here is the moment of truth where we're going to go and connect the two pieces with the zipper pulls. So if I can get my lovely wife to come help me, it's a lot easier with two people. One person can hold the zipper, another person can slide the zipper pull on that way. And I'll do my best to show you guys our process from doing this. Okay, so you can see we've got the foot ends here, and I'm just lining them back up. We've got our zipper pulls, and we're just going to simply put one on. Remember, I talked about earlier, you got the bump on the zipper. You can line that bump up with that with the zipper pull. So, hon, if you'd help me, will you come on to the other side, please? Take the zipper pull like that, and we'll line them up. Yep, you get them both in there even, and then you gotta pull them on. There we go. Thank you, honey. So you guys can see, we're zipping on the bug net now. See how much easier that was to sew without the bug net on? Now I don't want to go too far here because we have to put the other zipper pull on now. So we're going to do the same thing, and now we'll put it on from this side, and that way we'll have our double zipper pulls. So honey, if you could go take that one. Bada bing, bada boom. So our bug net is now officially attached. Alright, so it's looking really good, guys. We've got the bug net completely on. Let me flip you around here. So here's a look at our hammock. You can see the bug net pulls really nicely up off the face. And all I've done here is taken about a 6-foot piece of shot cord, and it's got a loop up there that will get an S-beaner, so it can go around a tree or clip on your suspension or whatever you want. And then down here it just comes down, goes through that loop we sewed on, and then back up into this cord lock, which allows us to adjust the tension. All right. And it's nice and loose, so it won't rip on us. And we've got our bug net sewn onto our pockets really nicely. The last little part down here, remember we left that gap where we're going to close it up so we can tie it off. I had some thoughts on that this time around. And this time I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you guys how I normally finish it off, and with the grosgrain, and then also the ties to tie it up if you're not using it. But I had this thought that you could run the cord, or run the zipper right to the middle on both sides, leaving you with virtually no gap, and then not put cord locks on. And what essentially that would allow you to do is, in the winter, when you don't want the bug net, you could unzip it and take it off completely, and you'd have a completely detachable bug net from your Ridge Runner. or excuse me, not your Ridge Runner. I guess you could call it kind of a Ridge Runner clone, but from your DIY bridge hammock, you'd have a completely removable bug net. So I think maybe the next one I do, I'm going to do that. And then to cover that little gap, all you need to do, because there'd be like maybe a centimeter gap from where the zippers meet, just a piece of grow grain or bug netting that just hangs and flaps over would seal up nicely, and you'd have a completely removable bug net. But for now, this one's just going to get the standard treatment of a grow grain across with 3 ties to tie up the bug net. But it's looking really good. We got our zipper poles here. They pull really nicely up and around the corners, and you can get in. So I'm just going to show you guys how we'll finish this end up here, and then we're going to take it out to the park, and I'll show you it, and we'll test it out. All right, so everything seems to be fitting well and working well. So like I said, next step is to kind of finish up that open end. So I've detached the bug net completely again, and that's so that we can finish this half a rolled hem on the bottom that we made while putting the zipper on. So I'm just going to continue that fold just so it's easy and even when we go to sew on the grow grain. Alright, so now that we've got that fold done and sewn in place, we're going to take some grow grain and seal one end of it. Find that first mark on the bug net where we marked to start the zipper, which is actually just a little bit past where the zipper actually starts. And I'm going to line it up so that the grow grain covers the zipper coil. And we're just going to go ahead and sew this on. Okay, now that we're reaching the end, as usual, we're going to line it up and cut the end of our grow grain. We're going to seal it with a lighter. And now we can continue sewing it on. So there is the end of the bug net. Now we're going to have to attach the bug net again to the hammock body. Alright, so hopefully you guys can see we've got this gap here, that grow grain that we just sewed on. We now need to use that to cover this gap here and cover the zipper. So that's all I'm going to do is just fold it over and sew these two parts together. And this is effectively closing our gap on our hammock so that it is totally bug proof. So we've got that piece sewn completely together. Now one of the last steps we need to do is to sew over the zipper on the ends here, on the foot end. Just sew over the zipper a couple times to create a stop. No need to put any real metal stops in. This will do the job for you just fine. Just like that. And that zipper is not coming off. Okay, so the very last step is to create the ties on the foot end so that when we're not using the bug net, we can roll it up and tie it in place. I ran out of grow grain, but what I did was cut 4 10-inch strips. I would say I would normally do 6 or 8 10-inch strips. It's going to take 2 strips to create 1 tie out, or not tie out, but 1 tie. So I've got 2 ties. That'll do for now. I can always add more later. Like I said, I normally would do 6 or 8 strips, which is going to be 3 or 4 ties to keep your bug net all tied up at the foot end. But all we're going to simply do now is line these up. I'm going to put them towards the end since I only have 2. I'm just going to put them towards the end of the piece of grow grain on the foot end, and I'm just going to sew right across it. I'll backstitch over once or twice, and then I'll flip it over and sew the exact same way. I'll sew another one on the other side, which will be the outside, so we'll have one. They'll be sewn together essentially like this with the hammock bug net in between, so that when we roll it up we can wrap them around and tie them. So I'm just going to go ahead Alright guys, so we're at the local park. Sorry for the street noise, but here is the hammock all put up. Looks pretty nice. Here are the tie-outs like I was talking about at the foot end. And so what do you say? We should get in this thing, huh? Test it out. So I'm gonna have my assistant, Noah. Noah, come on over here, bud. Sure, Daddy's in there. I want you to film me getting in. I'm just gonna unzip. It hangs a little low, but that can be fixed. We're just testing the bug net now. Nice and easy, so there's no, not really a whole lot of tension on the bug net. No, come over here, please. So you guys can see I can extend my arm all the way up to the top, and I'm just barely touching it. So there's lots of room in here. I can even sit up and my head doesn't touch the net. There's lots of room in the net, and the pockets are completely accessible, and and just to prove it, you really can, when laying down, unzip the whole thing. And this is what I like to do sometimes if it's not bad. Why don't you back up a little bit, Noah? Of course, not gonna do it now. If you're just laying there and you wanted to get the bug net out of your face for a little bit, you can just roll it up like that, and then it's out of your way. And yeah, that's the bug net, guys. So hopefully this video was helpful for you. It's a great hammock, it really is. And so I hope that helps, and we'll check you guys next time. Subscribe. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and we'll see you next time.